ideally the machine is 100% efficient, but practically it is not possible. Why? Machines will have friction, the parts will have friction, so there will be loss of energy. Second, there is pulley, so I am pulling the strings, that rope. Now the rope will have some mass, the pulley will have some mass, so I will have to apply force for bucket also, water also, pulley also, as well as the rope. So I am applying actually more efforts, right? So you will say there is friction, no part is frictionless, so there will be loss of energy. No part of the machine is weightless or massless, it will have some mass, so you will have to overcome that as well. And if the strings are not elastic, means if there is more friction, the strings are not elastic, so you will have to apply more effort. Clear? So ideally the efficiency should be 100. Practically it is not possible that it will have efficiency of 100. Okay, this is the difference. You can see actual machine, the output is always less than the input. There is some loss of energy due to, first, moving parts are not weightless or frictionless, the strings are not perfectly elastic, and different parts are not rigid. Means if I am drawing water, the bucket will oscillate, so I will have to apply more effort. Second, the pulley will move, the strings will move. All these things you have to consider, then only you can come to the conclusion. So ideally, and this is board question for 3 marks, why the ideal machine is 100%, actual is 100, not 100? Because actual, there are 3 points. That is, friction problem, friction will create a problem, strings are not elastic, and the different parts are movable. Hence the efficiency will be less. Now we'll see the relationship between efficiency, mechanical advantage, and velocity ratio. You know that efficiency is output work upon input work, or you can say work output upon work input. Work output is load into load arm, that is DL, and work input is effort into DE, that is called as effort arm. Now when I substitute efficiency as L into DL upon E into DE, what is the next step I am doing? You see, DL, which is there in the numerator, I am bringing that below DE. Okay, so L will be there itself, E will be there itself, DL I am bringing below DE. DL is the displacement of load and DE is displacement of effort. Now the last line, LHS is efficiency, load upon effort, and 1 upon DE by DL, but DE by DL is nothing but VR, and L by E is nothing but MA. So efficiency I get is MA by VR. This question might come for 2 marks. So how to start? You start with efficiency, that is work output upon work input. Instead of work output, you put load into load arm upon effort into effort arm. Load upon effort is MA, so in numerator you will get MA. The DE of the numerator, DL of the numerator will go in the denominator below DE, and DE by DL is nothing but VR. So we got the relationship, MA is equal to VR into efficiency, or you can say efficiency is equal to MA upon VR. Okay. Next, as I said, we'll talk about levers and then about the pulley. What is a lever? Lever is a rigid, straight or bent bar which is capable of turning about a fixed axis. A scale, a normal scale, I can consider that as a lever because it is rigid, it is straight, and if I fix at one point, I can even rotate it. So it is capable of turning about an axis. So there are 3 classes of lever: class 1, class 2, class 3. Let us imagine you are sitting on a seesaw. So center, the seesaw will bend. So center is the fulcrum. You are sitting at one end. So of course you will go down, You are the load. In order to lift you, there should be one person sitting on the opposite end. He will be the effort. So you are the load, center you have fulcrum, and the other person is the effort, because he is applying some effort in order to lift you. So in a lever, we have three things. First is the fulcrum, second is the load, and the third is the effort. Okay. With the help of this position, if you change the position of these three things, you can find the type of lever. We have class 1, class 2 and class 3. If fulcrum is at the center, then it is class 1. If load is at the center, then it is class 2. And when effort is at the center, it is class 3. Other two can be anywhere, doesn't matter. We are concerned about the center one. So remember, class 1, class 2, class 3, F, L, E. Class 1, F should be at the center, that is fulcrum. L for class 2, that is load, and E for class 3, that is effort, should be at the center. So this is the basic diagram of class 1, class 2, class 3. Now we will see few examples of class 1, class 2 and class 3. Principle of lever, that is in equilibrium, clockwise moment is equal to anti-clockwise moment. Do you remember? Principle of moments. Same principle holds true here. Exactly same principle. It is nothing but sum of clockwise moment is equal to sum of anti-clockwise moment, or load into load arm is effort into effort arm. Load L into DL is equal to E into DE. I repeat, L into DL is equal to E into DE. This actually we have got from the first chapter, that is principle of levers, moments. From that we have got principle of levers. Clear? Now the law of lever. If MA is equal to 1, if MA is equal to 1 means what? The effort arm is equal to load arm. If MA is greater than 1, then the effort arm is greater than load arm. How did we get this? Now ideally the efficiency should be 100%, and we studied that efficiency is equal to MA by VR. So when I take 100% means 100 by 100. So MA will be equal to VR, right? If nothing is mentioned, we have to assume that it is an ideal machine. Now MA is equal to VR for ideal machine. What is the formula of VR? It is DE by DL. So if MA is 1, VR will also be 1. So you will get DE is equal to DL, means the load arm is equal to effort arm. Such a machine, such a lever is used to change the direction. Next, if MA is greater than 1, means what? DE by DL is greater than 1. When you cross multiply, it is load arm, effort arm is greater than load arm. And MA is less than 1 means your effort arm is less than load. Effort arm is less than load arm. Okay. So how can we change the MA? MA can be changed by changing the position of the fulcrum. Because the load arm and effort arm, the distance is always from the fulcrum. So you just change the position of the fulcrum, your load arm and effort arm will change. Means if you're sitting on a seesaw, the other person is on the opposite side and it is at equilibrium, means the seesaw is straight. And when you move ahead, if you move ahead, you know what will happen? If you move ahead, the other person will go down, because you are reducing the load, right? So the load arm is less. If load arm is less, effort arm will be more, so MA will be more, hence the other person will go down, and of course the moment of force will be more, it is no more in equilibrium. So you have to remember this, because we have give reasons. Why do scissors have load arm greater than effort arm? Because MA is less than 1 and it is used as speed multiplier. Scissor is not for force multiplier. Now if you want to know what does this mean, take a scissor and find the fulcrum. You will see the fulcrum is at the center. Find the distance of fulcrum from your hand. Your hand is the effort. and distance of fulcrum from the paper which you are going to cut. You will see the load arm will be more, means the distance between the load, that is paper is your load, paper and fulcrum will be more than the distance between your hand and the fulcrum. So it's having MAS less than 1, it is used as speed multiplier. So the types of lever, as I said, class 1 lever means the fulcrum is at the center, example scissors, seesaw. Class 2 lever, here the load is at the center, that is the nutcracker. Can you see the nutcracker? Center you have the load, fulcrum is on the one side, and on the other side you have the handles to press. Next is wheelbarrow, something similar to what we see in Big Bazaar or D-Mart. When you drag the trolley, so the load is at the center, you are dragging it, so you are applying the effort, and on the other side you have the wheels. So it is nothing but very similar, not exactly, but it is similar to wheelbarrow. Next you have is the class 3 lever. Class 3 lever example is the tongs. Tongs is nothing but, as I said, chimta, which is used to take sugar, or maybe sugar tongs are very small. The other is to take chapati from the over the flame. If you want to remove chapati from the flame, you can use this tongs. Here the fulcrum is at one end, sugar is on the other end, and center you press it. So you are applying the effort there. Hence it is class 3. Next is fishing rod. Now the center of that string you will catch the fish. So fish is the load, and you are applying the effort, and at the very apex, the top of the fishing rod, you can see there is a fulcrum, because you are changing the direction. So if you rotate it clockwise, then the string will go down, and if you rotate that anti-clockwise, the string will come up. So that is the fulcrum is at the top. So class 1, class 2 and class 3, we have 3 types of levers. Okay. Class 1, it can act as force multiplier, it can act as speed multiplier, it can act as to change the direction. So MA can be greater than 1, less than 1, equal to 1. Please memorize this. Seesaw, it is just used to change the direction. Scissors, MA is less than 1. Okay. Hand pump, when you are removing water from under the ground, it is called as force multiplier. Next, class 2, MA is always greater than 1, means it is used as force multiplier. And class 3, it is always less than 1, so it is used as what? It is used as speed multiplier. Class 2 example, nutcracker, so even a small kid can break it, so it is force multiplier. Class 3 example is sugar tongs. So there is no force needed, it is just the speed multiplier. And if you check the tongs, the distance of load arm and effort arm, just check the distance of load arm and effort arm. The fulcrum is at one end, the effort arm is less than load arm, and hence it is used as speed multiplier.